Okay, so for the last like 2 years now or something, I've been hearing about this movie, The Sadness. It's like a year and a half, I think, something like that. But it's been a long damn time. I seriously thought it was like 3 years, but you know, I looked it up and supposedly it came out like in uh, Taiwan in like January of 2021. So that's only like a year and 4 months. But I've been hearing about this film for feels like forever. We'll just say that. And this was something that both of us were heavily looking forward to. And, I'm going to say this right up front. And I've said this many times in the past. And it definitely happens with films that get kind of delayed or pushed back or take too long to come out. And there's all this hype surrounding them. The hype, after a long period of time, builds things up too much.
Yeah,
You
it
know?
definitely does.
And then you talk to people who saw it and they're like, oh my God, it's just the most insane thing ever. And then you go, oh man, you really start getting in your head like, what's this gonna be? Is this just gonna be like some new definition of insanity? And like, are we gonna get like the goriest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life? You know? So anyway, I think you'll know where I'm heading with that, but we'll get there in a second. The sadness. What's the sadness about, Kaylee?
Sadness is about a viral infection that spreads through the population of Taiwan, a city in Taiwan, and people start becoming like these sadists and doing really horrible things to each other.
Now, I wouldn't consider this a zombie movie, right? This is more of an infection film. People aren't eating one another like a zombie movie would, where like you get bit and you turn. The rules of the zombie genre or subgenre really aren't at play here. I would definitely not put this in the zombie category. I would put it in the infection category, and that is a different, albeit similar.
Yeah, I get the distinction,
Subgenre.
but it's definitely very similar to like a zombie outbreak.
I mean, I don't have any problem with anybody calling this a zombie movie because it's just easily categorized.
Categorized?
I was gonna say
Categorized?
something else there, and it just fell apart like halfway through saying
Categorized?
it. Categorized. That's a new one because it got gore in it. Categorized.
Categorized, yeah.
I'm trying to save myself from looking stupid, and I'm just an idiot, and I can accept it.
Never.
But yeah, okay. It doesn't matter. Zombie movie classifications, doesn't matter about any of that shit. You like the movie, you don't like the movie, or whatever it is. But the film is being, really promoted upon the insanity of it, and that it's violent and brutal. And even Shudder, who uploaded this movie last night at like 9 p.m. our time, and we tried to watch it. And we tried to watch it again at like 10, and we tried to watch it again at 11, and we tried it again at 12, and I tried it again at 12:45, and it would not play. So fuck you, Shudder, for pretending to upload this movie and for it not to play. And I tried it on this TV, I tried it on the TV in the bedroom, I tried it on my fucking laptop, and I tried it on my phone.
Yeah.
I tried it on everything I had. And it would not play. Anyways, moving on from that. But even Shudder has a disclaimer. And Shudder, all they do is horror. And the people who subscribe to the channel, to the, streaming service, of course, they're there because they're horror people. You're not going to get Shudder unless you like violent horror movies. I don't see why the fuck you would have a Shudder account otherwise. So even there's a disclaimer right on the description of it, like this is graphic violence. And so with everyone's hyping, and with that I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be so insane. This is gonna have crazy gore. I'll say this, I enjoyed the movie, so I don't want to make it seem like that. And I definitely think there's going to be a lot of people that are like, oh my God, this is insane, this is graphic,
absolutely.
What the hell are these guys?
Yeah.
Or not you guys, I don't want to talk for you. But
yeah. Well, I think that it depends, right? Like, everyone's different with, like, what level of gore they think is too much. Like, there's certain, like, acts or, things that are done that like, crosses a line of, like, what's too gory. I do think that it is a really gory film for most people. I think most people, like, if you're not a horror fan...
But these are horror fans I'm getting this information from.
But that's... Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess when you compare it to other things, too, right? Like, that's also hard. Like, because if you compare it to other movies, it is much gorier than some.
Sure, than some.
Yeah, but it's not, like, the end-all, be-all of gore. Like, there were plenty of times... I said this earlier to you, where we were watching it and there were scenes happening that we'd look over at each other and be like, show it to us.
Show
like,
it
we
to
want
us.
To see.
Yeah, there's a bunch of off-screen kills. And it's like, in a movie like this, with a disclaimer and all this hype behind it, I want to see every fucking death on screen.
Yeah.
I want to see it violently displayed to me. This is what I'm here for. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing interesting going on in the film dramatically. Right? Like, there's a couple that are separated, and they're trying to get to one another. Weirdly, I don't feel that, like, super sense of urgency. It's there, but I don't feel like the relationship is built up enough, and that there's, like, enough yearning and, like, they're trying to get to each other and, like, nothing will keep them apart kind of thing. Like, I think the film was trying to go for, because that's really the only driving force of the film as far as a plot goes. Other than that, it's just, attempts of debauchery and mayhem. Yeah. And I want to say this again. It's a violent movie.
It is
right?
Violent.
It's a good watch for people who are into these kinds of movies. I enjoyed my time. Did it live up to the hype for me? No. Mm-hmm. Did I think it was some insanely violent film that I was like, holy shit, I can't believe how wild that was? No. And I very much, I had to, as soon as this was over, because Kaylee had never seen it, I wanted to kind of set a different bar for her to be like, this is what I'm used to. This is what I consider to be graphic, gory, on-screen violence. So I showed her Peter Jackson's Brain Dead, Dead Alive, which is like 100 times gorier than this movie.
Yeah.
Like, the amount of gore, the amount of violence on screen in that film. Now, that film's more playful than this film.
Oh, yes.
Right? Like, that's more of a horror comedy.
Yeah.
But the gore is fucking lunacy. Like, it's nutty how, like, wild that film is. And with this film, I don't know, and we've talked about this, and I've said this before, I feel like with, like, tones of films, you are only allowed to get away with so much in a serious toned horror film. Like, I feel like in horror comedy, you can pretty much go for broke and show anything you want on screen, especially if the practicals and the gore are done not 100% realistic. Like, it's pretty, like, it looked kind of fake, but it's still ish real, and then you can just kind of go all out.
Right.
But in a movie that's, like, uber serious, you're just not allowed to get away with it. But this is something I've always been so confused about with these kinds of movies. It's like, I want a company to come along, like a Shudder. Shudder should be the fucking company that does it, and say, you know what? We're just going to fund balls to the wall murder movies that just show, like, because fans would flock to it. The fans that you're going after.
Yeah.
The real fucking horror gore fans would lose it over, a Brain Dead style film, that level of gore and violence
in a
serious film. But you just, you could never get an R rating, but you don't need it. You're Shudder, right? You have your own fucking platform to release it on. Mm-hmm. Fuck the MPAA. Fuck what anybody thinks of it. Mm-hmm. You're literally releasing it on a platform for horror fans only.
Yeah.
And if anybody complains about it, get fucked.
Yeah, I mean, there's an example in both The Sadness and Brain Dead, where Brain Dead gets away with, going through with a gag and using a certain prop. And in The Sadness, like, we don't get shown a very specific scene that would have really amped things up towards the end.
Sure.
Which I think with The Sadness, too, given, like, what it is about, it just would have made it even more, like, harrowing to see, like, really, really see what people were doing.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. This is the kind of film, because as I had alluded to earlier, or outright said, the film has nothing to offer much else outside of its violence. The film is very shallow.
Sure.
And there's no depth to the characters or anything going on. It's just a city gone mad. And people are brutalizing each other for the fun of it, because that's what compels them to do it as zombies. And they just want to inflict as much pain and on people as they possibly can. And it's so, like, you're not there for much else. So when these scenes happen and you're not showing me, it's like, what's the fucking point? Especially if it's like being heralded as this like gory cinematic fucking, debauchery. It's like, why is that not there? And if there is a director's cut or something where they cut the scenes, why would they do that? Put it back in. It's on Shudder. You don't need an R rating. You don't need any rating. Put it in. That said, I'm sick in the fucking head. Okay, I will outright admit it. I don't think a fucking film could be gory enough for me to be happy. I think I will always be like, it could have been worse. Could have been better. Could have been more violent. So I do have an insanely high threshold.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. I think for a lot of people, this film is like really close to their max threshold for gore.
Oh, 100%. This is way over.
It's,
a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a super violent film. But, I mean, there's always people like you who can handle more. And then there's always people who can just, like, they don't want anything close to that. Like, they see a couple drops of blood and they're like, it's so gory. Like, oh my God.
Blood is not gore, people. We've went over this a million times. I know you know that. Blood is not gore. Yeah. Anybody who says blood is gore is fucking lying to you and is a total coward.
But this is what I mean about everyone being different, right? Like, some people get really affected by the most minimal amount of anything, body horror related to that. So,
yeah.
I don't know. But I do think that, like, so what you were saying earlier about, like, the driving force of the film, like, I feel like the couple's relationship, I was pretty invested, like, in the beginning, and I did feel a sense of urgency in the beginning by him. By him. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you. I think about halfway through the film, it just kind of drops off, which is when things should have just gone, like, batshit crazy.
Absolutely.
And been like, they're never, like, what the fuck is happening? But I really enjoyed this movie. I like the way that the people look when they're infected. I think that's fucked up.
Yeah.
And the gore that we did get, I thought looked really great, so if I'm comparing it to Brain Dead or Dead Alive, though, I do prefer the gore in that movie by like a million.
Yeah, 100%. But okay, if I had not heard anything about this movie.
Yeah.
And we just threw it on Shudder. Like, we came on and I was like, oh, The Sadness, what's this?
Oh, yeah. That would have been a great surprise. And we pressed play.
I would have been here being a little bit more, praising of the movie. That said, I still would have been, 100%, I still would have been like, I would have liked for them to show more of the death.
Sure.
More of, like, I want to see people's fucking insides ripped out. I want to see fucking shit pulling apart, faces, jaws ripped off.
Gosh.
Victor Crawley fucking hatchet grabbing the guy's face and ripping it apart and seeing it close up. That's what I want to see. Sure. Right? And when it's just like somebody's doing something off screen and blood spraying in their face, that's not gore to me, and it never will be.
Yeah.
And people will think, oh my God, that's so violent. It's so insane. It's never that. Those scenes completely can go away from me. The whole not seeing what's happening on off screen and blood spraying on somebody, I'm done with them. I hate that scene. I'm sick of it. Show me the fucking. It's fine if I can see the gore happening. Then you cut back to the guy and he's getting the blood sprayed. Fine. But just the blood spray, no. I don't like it.
Yeah, and
it
there's
seems
plenty
like
of people,
either do it or don't do it.
well, and then like the opposite of that is that you're imagining what they're doing. Right?
Well, and that's
So
just
for a
it.
ton
So
of
if you're
people,
going to
that
go for the
really works.
imagination thing,
Yeah.
then I don't even need to see that. Just be like, look, we're not going to show you anything.
Like you can just think about
Just
it.
some blood spray on you is no,
Yeah.
no, I don't want it. I don't want it. Anyway, no, but yeah, a lot of the film, and I think this is where a lot of people do kind of get mixed up because I've talked about this with you, like where you talk to people who saw Halloween in 1978 and then you talk to them to now and they're like, oh my god, it's the most violent film I've ever seen, it was so gory, it was so graphic. And I say the same thing about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then you're like, there's no violence, like there's violence technically, but
Right.
there's no gore.
Yeah.
There's nothing, you don't see a fucking drip of blood. So their memory fills it in. Their memory of it is filled in by what the implication was,
Yes.
and they filled it in with their imagination.
Yes.
And this film does that too for people because there is a lot of implications. There's a lot of shit said that's really fucked up.
Yes.
Like really, really fucked up, descriptions and stuff that people are saying that they want to do or that they did or whatever. You don't see any of it, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a really wild scene with a guy and a girl, and you don't see it though.
No,
you know? And it's like,
but you know it's happening.
you know it's happening,
Yeah.
but to me,
But so
put on a Serbian film. Let's go.
I think that's
I
like
want to see it.
with people, that say that Halloween is like the most violent film that they've seen. I do think that in some ways that's a testament to the filmmaking
Sure.
itself, because the fact that they're remembering it that way and it creeped them out that much and everything, I think is pretty impressive. And with this movie, they show you a lot, but they also don't show you a lot. So I think it's probably will be very easy for people to remember things happening that you don't get explicitly shown.
But we've talked about this, like, if I don't need gore, I don't need it at all. I mean, Halloween is my favorite horror movie. There is no gore in it. It's not about the gore. As much as I love it, I'm fine with there not being any. Mm-hmm. There's tons of horror movies that we watch that have none, and I'm like, that movie was rad.
Yeah.
I love that because that's what it was going for.
Sure.
This film, all it has to offer
Is the violence.
Yeah. That's really all this movie is. So it needs to deliver on that, right? Mm-hmm. It's watching porno where all the sex scenes are mostly cut.
Yeah.
And you're like somebody's like recommending you a porn, and they're like, "Oh my god, dude, the sex scenes are amazing."
And you're like, I can't.
And then you see like a dick for a second, and a pussy for like a half a second. You're like, "Okay, I kind of saw it. I'm kind of into this. I think. I don't know. I'd like to see more. I'd like to see a whole lot more." Anyways,
that's a good analogy.
yeah. So I don't know. It's a recommendation.
Yes.
It's only for people who are into violent films.
Yes.
Right? Like that's all you're there for. But don't get yourselves up, your anticipation, excitement levels up too high if you're someone like me who's fucked in the head and should probably seek mental help.
But it is violent.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's not much else to talk about with the movie. It really is just kind of like, people are mutilating each other and saying really fucked up shit, and people are running away from that and trying to survive, and that's it. That's a movie.
Yeah.
There's nothing else
well,
there.
One thing that we can say, because this happened like throughout the film, is how weirdly, eerily similar it is to the COVID pandemic. Like there was a lot of stuff that was said.
Yeah.
And some visual, like just some shots that were like, wait, what? And then COVID.
Yeah, I'm sure this was written during COVID.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I mean, COVID really broke out in China because this is set in Asia, right? Mm-hmm. So it broke out in China in like December of 2019. Yeah. Right? Somewhere around that area. November, December, somewhere like that. And then this came out in January of 2021. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they had over a year. 100% of this was COVID. Mm-hmm. that spawned this film. But yeah, it's good. It's on Shudder. It's a little bit of a disappointment for me. I was kind of bummed watching it, to be honest. Towards the end, I was kind of like, that was it? You know? And that sucks, because I didn't want it to be like that. But I'm only going to give you guys my fair opinion. You seem to...
I wasn't bummed. I mean, I feel like I could have handled more gore. Like, I would have liked to see more, but...
Of course you could handle it.
But, you
That's
know...
why we put rings on it, because you can handle it all.
But... I mean, I enjoyed it. I agree with you that there's not really a lot as far as, like, the plot and the substance of, like, the writing that I have to, like, analyze or anything. But, you know, I mean, it was creepy. There's some definitely scary stuff. And, like I said, the way that they look is, like, that kind of a look is something that will always freak me out with their, like, eyes and their faces and stuff. So, I enjoyed it.
Let us know if you watch it. Bye.